Welcome back, Red Spotters, another show here on Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host, Alexis J. Soto, in another installment here of our beloved Beyond the Shield extended segment series. I'm joined, of course, by my fellow agent, Mr. David Francisco. David, how are you doing this week?
Good.
You know, I gotta say, it's been pretty bleak, dark, heavy, and scary these last few weeks, these last few months, in the age of the pandemic, right? But I am just so happy that we get to have something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now, because it's just giving me something to look forward to every single week. No matter if we're getting closer and closer to the end, and yeah, it's starting to hit me that we're getting closer to the end, but at the same time, I'm just so happy that what an event this has turned into. You know, the final season of this TV show. So this week we have season 7, episode 5, A Trout in the Milk. Perfectly titled. As always, David and I like to just go off into how we broadly received this episode. If you've been listening the last few weeks, it's been nothing but fanfare here. It really has been a pretty overwhelming response in the positive direction, how this season has been so far. I don't even know where to start except for, I mean, this won't be a shock. I loved it. There's a lot about it that I really loved. I think on a weekly basis, they're finding ways to continuously top themselves for what they did the previous week. We'll get to that intro, don't worry. Yeah, it's weird because, you know, you kind of got, at least I got, a false sense of security. Because this episode starts really fun, poppy, bubbly, just like, and hilarious as well. And then there's a turn, and then things get serious pretty quickly. And with the amount of reveal in terms of like the Hydra Chronicom Alliance and the changes to the timeline and the gravity of which this particular mission has to it, the stakes were kind of raised more than in the previous weeks, kind of unexpectedly. To me, this episode had the urgency of a mid-season finale, with just how much it ended up being and going on. There's a lot to say in terms of like where this is going. The stakes have kind of been upended in some ways, and there's still a lot of mystery. There's
new mysteries.
There's new mysteries, right? And I'm hoping we're gonna get some answers pretty soon. We're reaching the midway point of the series of this season, and it's strange to me that it hasn't felt like it's been over a month since S.H.I.E.L.D. came back. It's so strange to me because it's, you know, this week coming, it's going to be a month and a half since it's been back. And I'm like, what? I just can't. I can't with this. But yeah, David, what did you think of this episode?
No, this was great. Really, like, the best thing about this episode was Sousa again, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, just like I said, like the new mysteries that we're kind of seeing, it's pretty well built up. And the big danger of this episode, it was it was a complete surprise, honestly.
It was.
And so, yeah, like I said, this is just another great episode. Another great episode because of the way they were kind of getting into the 70's filmmaking type of thing again. Like you see in the beginning and in that intro. And I really only noticed like one shot that was very like 70's action movie type of camera movement. I think you know what it is.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. I mean, you said it best. It's another great episode.
Well, like with the genre of it, right? Like, look, I think every week we're kind of have to like start off with that because, again, as you know, not just fans of the show, but as you know, just fans of filmmaking and genre filmmaking in general, it's just so, it's such a wonderful touch that they add to this. Not just the show, but the fact that it's the final season, the fact that it's exciting every single week and fresh almost every single week, and it makes every episode an event in and of itself. Like this week we're going off into a new decade, and honestly I think the show is in such a roll right now. They're on such a roll in terms of like episode after episode, just hitting it out of the park, at least for me. I understand, and I'm sure that, you know, listeners of this podcast, you know, remember that I gave very high marks to season 6 and season 5, but I think everyone would agree that season 4 was the strongest season of the show by far.
For sure.
But this is the closest it's felt to season 4, where episode after episode, not only is it like, I feel a home run, but it's just like, as a season, it works and it fits really, really well. So, which is like, how many shows can say that about their last season?
Yeah.
You know?
True.
There's some. There's some out there that I think have a great, fantastic final season. Do not get me wrong.
I'm sure it's just like a handful of shows that people can think of. That's it.
Right.
But compared to every single other one, oh my God.
Yeah, more often than not, the last seasons are just there's a pretty broad range, from all right, decent to just bad, in general. But yeah, so I love how this season is shaping out, but into the 70s genre. I mean, okay, yes. So there was this one shot. We'll go into it, the specifics. This is where Deke and Yo-Yo. I was laughing, by the way. I laugh so hard whenever I catch these things. It's like, man, they're really going for it. So Deke and Yo-Yo go in to arrest one of the recurring villains of the season, Wilfred Malik, and they bust the door open, and there's like this really like quick zoom shot on like the bad guy henchman being like busted through the door, and then like it pans up to Deke and Yo-Yo, and it's like, I mean, the fact that you don't see that kind of at all anymore in movies. Yeah. And the fact, it's even if you didn't know that was one of the, the stylistic choices for 70s film making, you kind of get the impression because every single week they've been taking tropes of the genres of not just filmmaking, but then also, television, which we'll get into that intro in a bit. But yeah, it kind of gave it away, and it was hilarious. So it was like, it's a serious moment, right? But it's like, oh my God, what a badass entrance. Like, and so retro as well,
yeah. Especially with Deke coming in with the gun. Like, that is such a 70s trope right there. Oh my God. Like, I remember watching other shows that like try to get that 70s like detective vibe type of thing, and it's always like they start kicking and everything, and they go freeze sucker. It's like they could have done that, and I would have been okay with it, honestly. Yeah. But yeah, that one specific shot, it stood out the most.
It's like what you said last week. They know, they do just enough. They know what line they're pushing, and they don't necessarily go way over the top. I mean, they could have, but I think that could have undercut a lot of the seriousness just that's inherent with the plot of this episode. No, but you're right. I was just cracking up. Like every time I catch one of those, I'm like, oh my God,
that's great.
Oh my fucking God. And then before we get to the maybe the best intro of the show ever, of this show ever.
Yes.
After that concludes, I assume this was like, what I guess is what happened is, because they filmed in New York City, or they filmed on, I don't know, it looks as if it sets in New York, but it's like they took aerial shots of New York City. Well, no, I think the first opening shot of the episode had to have been archival, unless the VFX team added it in there, but the Twin Towers were in the opening shot of the episode, right?
They were?
Yeah, the Twin Towers in New York City.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Because this is the 70s, so they had to be there, honestly. So I would assume they took archival footage, because the first like one or two shots of the episode, and it lasts, I feel, all the way up to Coulson walking like, I don't know, like he's in a fucking like Bee Gees music video in New York City and of course, you know, Bear McCreary's music, which is just perfect every single week with this. But there's like film grain that you can see that's like usually characteristic of archival footage. So I would assume that they just added that effect into it, but it's either they added the Twin Towers via VFX, or they found archival footage and they just put it at top. And it kind of, you know, of course, because the whole introduction of this episode leans so much into the 70s aesthetic. David, talk about that fucking intro.
Oh my God.
You know, the last 2 weeks, I think like I was so excited and getting happy. I think that this killed me in the best possible way. Talk about this intro.
Well, I don't watch a lot of shows from like the 70s or anything like that.
Of course not.
Like,
no,
so,
I mean,
but do you know what that stood out that was similar to what they did? I can't even remember the name of the show, but it's like that one that takes place like in Vietnam or something, and like
is it MASH?
MASH, yeah, I think that one. Like, I think they're just like, you know, it's basically like close-up shots of the characters and all that.
Right.
Like, that's one part that they did. But the thing that stood out for me the most was that S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra logo, different colors popping up. Oh my God! As soon as I saw it, I went, "Yes, this is the best one now." Holy shit! But also like the shots that they used for the characters. So it's like starring Chloe Bennett, Ming Na Wen, and like for them too, it was their like fighting stance. But then like so some people are like, well, who was it? Deke and Simmons.
Yeah,
they're smiling at the camera, and I thought, oh my God, it was. It was the best thing ever. And
it was perfect in so many ways. Like, yes. I can't even tell you. Because so imagine, if you will. So this introduction is very much because see, I didn't know this was something that was like that. It began in the 70s, because I would watch a lot of 80s and 90s era sitcoms, and at that point, you know, what was characteristic of that time was these shows would open with a theme song and an opening credits like recap of who all the cast was. And like one of the more famous ones is, I think, Full House, where they go through all the different stars, like as you were saying, starring Clark Gray, Ming Na Wen, Chloe and of course you have the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. theme, which they're like continuously on a weekly basis now, just like giving it a different like mix. This got a 70s like mix, and you're right. I think to me the best ones were for Elizabeth Henstridge and especially I think the one that I was just like dying because he. Jeff Ward as Deke. I mean, he literally turns around, looks into the camera, and smiles, and like that's that's like, I think, taken out of like I don't know how many shows that basically just did that exact same thing, and it's so on brand because that's not the first time that character has broken the fourth wall and looked into the camera. Go back to last year's episode Code Yellow, where he had a whole introduction of his like his startup company, right? And then like he looks into the camera, like literally before the intro even happens. So it's like, yeah, that character.
I'm so curious, like what the cast thinks of these things. Like when they tell them, like, okay, here's how we're gonna shoot this beginning part of the episode, and they're just kind of like, awesome. Or like,
no, I think,
I'm so curious.
I think what will give you a better sense of it. So on a weekly basis, I've been tuning into Elizabeth Henstridge, the actress that plays Gemma Simmons, her YouTube channel. And every single week as the episode is airing, she has some of the cast and crew that were important to that episode. They come in and they chat about not just like what it was like to film it, but what they think of it themselves and everything. So like for 1 week, they had, I know for every week, they've had the directors and the writers of that particular episode. Now, keep in mind, so this is TV. So Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen are the show runners. They're basically like, if this were a movie, they're the directors, quote unquote. But since this is the world of TV, they don't personally, if at all, hardly ever, except for a handful of times, direct the episodes or write the episodes themselves. They come up with the overall direction of the season and what they want to happen. But of course, you have a team of writers that come in and help, like, and they're given an individual episode to flesh out. So on the episode Alien Commies from the Future, we had the Zuckerman sisters that joined Elizabeth Henstridge, and they have a lot of wonderful commentary about, you know, where they went, how it was conceived, and it gives you an idea of like how the cast themselves really do appreciate this. Like what I get anyway out of a weekly watch and viewing of this is that they're so happy and they consider themselves fortunate to be part of a cast and crew that had a familial vibe to it rather than a, you know, contentious and competitive drive to where they want to, like, you know, push each other off the totem pole, as it were. No, I mean, that'll give you a great sense of how they come up with this and how much fun they really do have with it. But yeah, I mean, that intro slayed. Like, I honestly didn't need any more out of that. And yeah, you were saying something else after? I'm sorry, did I cut you off?
No, that was it.
Okay, it's because, like, so yeah, that, yes. And of course, in so many ways, the costume and makeup, they're hitting it out of the park every single week. Except, and there's been some, I don't want to say controversy, but perhaps there's been some criticism with one of the characters. What did you make of the makeup for the older Wilfred Malik? Because it's been kind of universally attacked. In some ways, some have said that it was just so bad that it had to be on purpose. Because I guess at that like decade, that was characteristic of certain productions. Just over the top bad makeup. I don't know.
I have never seen one good old person makeup on any show, honestly.
Yeah.
On what was it? On the show Arrow, they went like 20 years to the future, and you see the main cast like having wrinkles and everything. One person, like, you could clearly tell he was wearing a freaking like giant wig to make himself give that gray white hair. And like it was very jarring to watch, honestly. So like any show, really, like, you'll see some bad makeup or like old person makeup on. But honestly, for this one, it's probably the best one that I've seen.
See, so, I didn't mind it.
Yeah, same. Like, again, the one from Arrow, like, it was distracting. This one was kind of like, I feel like they just added some grays. I don't know if I couldn't really tell much for the
You
face.
also seem to be like have a very low bar. It seems like considering like for TV, right?
Yeah.
You're right. I think that's just an accepted rule that the only like aging up that I think is done great is if you have like a movie level budget, right?
Yeah.
Like think of Steve Rogers in Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Oh,
or Peggy Carter in Winter Soldier. But again, that's like movie level, like you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars there. That's a lot of money that you get to do that a TV show just it can't compare to.
Yeah, and especially for TV shows, like they're probably there for who knows how many hours trying to shoot a quick scene.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to get through it fast with movies, you know, you put it on and you're probably just there try to get as much footage as you can because you have like, who knows, the entire day or few days, you know. You have short amount of time with TV shows, so it's not always going to be perfect.
All right. So, it's interesting because there's also a little bit more of a genre twist to this than perhaps is on the surface and the aesthetic. This is the 70s. This episode features a pretty significant tie-in to Captain America the Winter Soldier, which, if you remember, and it is, as far as the genre of, you know, what inspired the making of that movie was a 70s political thriller. So in more ways than one, you have that kind of genre of filmmaking also being included into the plot of the episode. Full disclosure, for listeners who, for whatever reason, aren't already aware of this, The Winter Soldier happens to be my favorite MCU movie. It happens to be a lot of people's top tier MCU in general. I wish I had a camera, or maybe I didn't even need to, because I feel like Coulson's face kind of said it all in terms of like how and I think you were feeling. So when we get to the part of the episode, so we'll start off this review just talking about what happened, because holy shit. And I think we have to kind of start off in this scenario, and then we'll get to the characters and their individual things later on. But when Malik, which I mean, I fully expected the Chronicoms like intervened and made him live longer. I mean, that was kind of like not a shock at all.
Oh yeah.
But when Malik talks about targeting satellites, before we even like cut to Coulson, I'm like, wait, where have I heard this before? Like, this sounds really familiar.
Oh right? My god, it was insane. I couldn't believe it, honestly. Like, I mean, again, I think we said it like last week or maybe a few weeks ago. We really have no idea what's ever going to happen with the Chronicoms time traveling. But to speed up a certain plan that Hydra made, that was completely unexpected, especially because that's a big change in the timeline. You know, like if S.H.I.E.L.D. was actually like canon to the MCU, which I know, it's just out the window. We all know that. Like that completely changes Winter Soldier. It changes everything. No, it changes. That's how massive it is. So you're talking like you're saying that was a Hydra plan. Project Insight was the Hydra plan. That's true.
It wasn't. Like, it was the plan. It's interesting to me that since Nathaniel was also alive, I wonder if the Chronicoms kind of steered the Malik family away from that cult that was loyal to Hive, and I guess Hive died of starvation at this point. So I'm going to assume that whole sacrificing didn't happen unless we're going to see Hive. I don't know if that's going to happen. But he seems to be like removed from the picture at this point, since the Maliks are not only alive, but also Nathaniel is alive as well. And now that Malik is basically in charge of this, whereas in... Because look, if we're talking about the timeline, at this point, Zola would have died, and he would have transferred his consciousness over to the computer. See, the thing about Project Insight, it took that long because, the Winter Soldier was out there shaping the world that they wanted it to be, but the technology didn't exist in the 70s. There weren't any helicarriers. Clearly there weren't. Agent Coulson said way back in, season 2, that helicarriers were only being introduced in the late 90s with S.H.I.E.L.D. history. So we're really far off from those times. And then more to the point, how they didn't have the algorithm yet to determine like who to cross off the list. Yeah. So it's like there was nothing ready at their disposal, and like Project Insight was the plan to not only eliminate S.H.I.E.L.D. but all of their enemies at once for world domination, and they used that by in the movie anyway, by talking the good guys, the World Security Council. Well, you can argue if they're good or not. Nick Fury, same shades of gray. And they kind of, talked them into this idea that Project Insight is the next phase of world security, to which Cap immediately was like, that's not going to work out. Yeah. And that's tyranny immediately. So, it says a lot, I think, that a lot of good agents were really talked into. To me, that's why, like, not to like have a whole discussion of the Winter Soldier, but it also, I think, doesn't excuse the sins of S.H.I.E.L.D. themselves, because top brass at S.H.I.E.L.D., that's not Hydra, also wanted Project Insight to happen, and that in and of itself is a tyrannical decision to make, clearly. So, but we got even more parallels with this. So, so in this timeline, the Hydra only has, I guess, a shuttle, and they already have. See, I wasn't aware if they already had the satellites up in the air, and what they were launching was the targeting system. I guess that's what it was. Or maybe they were launching the satellites and they were the targeting system. I can't really be sure about what that was, but look at the parallels. Both of the instruments of destruction that were supposed to carry out Project Insight in the Winter Soldier and in this episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were launched from underwater bases.
Oh my God.
Can you, that's like, I'm not sure if that was intentional. I think it might have been accidental because, you have a perfect set in the lighthouse. And look, I have to say this right now. Mark Kolpak and his team at VFX, I think, really outdid themselves. That was because we took some long zoom in shots. We had some shots from underneath, and we're seeing the water, and then of course from above. That has to be some of the best visual effects I've ever seen on a TV show. That was so good.
Yeah, no, same. Like, I think it just keeps helping that they always try to improve every single season, like over and over. And you're right, this is some of the best stuff that they made so far. I can't wait for the next episodes. Who knows what the heck they're gonna do?
I know. This is episode 5. This is episode 5, and it's like, whoa. And of course, the whole nature of Project Insight upends like the week-to-week situation we've been having, because the Chronocoms really stepped it up. In so many ways. But to see Coulson's face react to Hydra having accelerated Project Insight, you could tell how disturbed and horrified his was. Like, Clark Gregg's face, it's interesting because he can say so much with just like the slightest like change in his look. And he was like, oh no, this is bad. This is bad news.
Yeah, and Sousa's reaction to it just kind of like, almost every second of the episode, he's just kind of scared and worried about the time changing. Every single time, and to find out that Hydra's biggest plan is coming to fruition super early, and I'm even finding out about the plan. It's kind of like, yo, what the heck? This is
scary.
I couldn't stop this, you know?
Yeah.
And oh my god, it's
Yeah, and I want to get to Sousa in a bit because there's a lot going on with him. He was great in the episode, and there's a lot of great perspective that he brings to it that I think is sobering for the rest of the team. So, I mean, if that wasn't enough to just the reveal of Project Insight to upend expectations, you just have like we have a recon at the Zephyr, which by the way we can't glide over this. Enoch's back. Yes. Enoch kind of stole the show. I love how the first thing that they were like, okay, we got to go get Enoch now. Mm-hmm. And then of course, like even he has to like get shown the shaft after like Hydra introduces Project Insight. So it's like, again, a little bit more waiting, but he comes to the rescue. Mm-hmm. Come with me if you want to continue to exist. God, that character. I love him so much. Yes, so best. Much. And then, of course, we come back to the Zephyr, and like, if that wasn't enough, the fucking time machine starts counting down from 20 seconds, and like, what the fuck? Like, we can't jump now. Like, they're in the middle of like ending the world. We can't let this happen. And you know, Yo-Yo tries, but of course she can't do it, and they jump. Yeah.
What exactly was her plan? Like, to just stop the time machine, or was
I think she was. The way that it was presented was that she was trying to get the fuck out. She was basically going to like sacrifice 3 years of her life to stay behind so she could help stop. Basically, she was doing what Sousa was kind of bitching about the whole episode. It's like, let me stay behind so I can help things by the time like you jump, I don't know how many years forward. She was getting ready to use her powers, but again, she couldn't do it, and it wasn't quick enough for her to get off the plane.
Okay.
And whatever. That's what I thought that she was trying to do, but clearly unsuccessful.
Yeah.
But they jumped 3 years to the day, July 4th, 1976. Mm-hmm. And just the urgency of that. Yeah. Like, holy shit. So like, and this is just half of the episode, how quickly things just like domino into this, right? So just how it was like presented, I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? This just got like 10 new levels of bad going on, like all the way.
What a great advantage for the Chronicoms, though, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, since now they know that they're just following them, like, oh my God, they can really just screw with them every single time.
Which is what happened this episode.
Yeah,
well, you know what? Fuck you. We're gonna jump ahead. Like, yeah, like honestly, like the Chronicoms as like villains kind of were really upgraded this week, and like just like their pure intellect in and of itself, and it makes you realize. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say it makes you realize how easy they've kind of been going on S.H.I.E.L.D. Like compared to like how much things have escalated in just this week.
No, I was gonna say, like, I don't think they were going easy on them. It's just that they're finally learning, you know? Before it was just like, just simple, stick to the plan, stop them at any cost. But then you had that scene with Wilford Malik where he tried to protect his son.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like, what are you doing? It's like, they even said like this, I don't understand what the heck you're doing right now, or something like that. Or the Chronicom.
Yeah.
And so they're finally kind of learning, what is it, psychological warfare, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's even bigger disadvantage for the team. It's insane. Like, I really like that little upgrade to the villains.
Yeah, I think it was, by the way, I'm actually enjoying, that actor. I think his first name is Tobias, who, is playing the lead, soldier, I guess you could say, of Chronicoms. More and more, he does come across as very robotic, so I think it's kind of a very convincing performance in that regard. But when he says to Malik, "This is most unusual behavior,"
that's the line.
Yeah, they learn a valuable lesson, and man, do they learn it in spades. Like, that was kind of consequential to, because like they fuck everything up. Like, so not only do they like jump in time 3 years, there are 3 simultaneous threads going on in addition to that, that are inspired by Malik's decision to save his son, and use it against S.H.I.E.L.D. By, as what they say and describe it, as having leverage. And it seemed as if they had leverage and then some. Actually, now I wonder if I'm just wondering now. So many different things. Because we'll just get into it because there's just so much to cover here. I do want to get into the character dynamics, but I mean, this is just all encompassing, right? With the Chronicoms and the plot. So you have the gut punching reveal of Mag's parents. You could see you can see, I think Henry Simmons does a good job as as just playing that character, but you can see how devastated he was to see, like, that's my parents. Like, just as they were about to flood the base.
Yeah, and knowing like what he has to decide in that moment.
Yeah.
Well, actually, like the build up to it.
Yes.
Like, you could see him looking at the monitors, and he's kind of like, "Hold on, no." And then
he was staring at it for quite a few minutes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was great. That was honestly a great scene for like great build up to it. And
all of the build up to it was so good, and it's like you realize, like, man, they got so played this episode. This has been a long time since like Team S.H.I.E.L.D. has been played like that, and the Chronicoms got them good, because at the same time you also have they told Nathaniel that if anyone was going to hack into the system, it would be at this spot, and it would be Daisy, who Nathaniel and Daisy had an interaction in 1973. Nathaniel saw Daisy's powers, and the reveal that, I guess we're going to have Daniel Whitehall back in the end of the episode, where like Nathaniel wants to transfer her powers into him, because Daniel Whitehall had the whole theory. And of course, talking about how the inherent nature of Hydra has always like defined Daisy's entire existence. Basically, Daniel Whitehall did that to her mom, Jiaying, which then caused her to turn evil. And then the whole so many things are just spiraling out of time. And, with all of that happening, I really begin to ask myself, how is this show going to end?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to end up having to do like an endgame thing where like someone goes back and resets the timeline? Or do we just create a whole new universe? I don't know.
That I don't know. Like, I can only guess that someone has to be sacrificed to like fix everything almost. And honestly, dude, I really don't know. And I think like the one big question for me right now is, the Chronicoms, they just keep having a big advantage over everyone. Yeah. How the heck are they gonna get an advantage over them now? Because like all they're doing is just following and playing catch up basically with the Chronicoms every single time. So yeah, that's my big question really. It's like how are they gonna deal with them? Because they can't do anything at all basically. No. And the next episode, it's not a time traveling episode really. It's just them trying to get away. I don't know what the heck is gonna happen.
Yeah. That I think that also just adds in a level of fun and excitement that like, I don't know where this is going. And usually S.H.I.E.L.D. does a good job of masking a lot of the mystery, but this season, more than any other season, I feel like we just don't know, because you can do whatever you want with the whole, venue of time travel, right? So yeah, that's all up in the air. So, but then at the same time, the Chronicoms also have additional leverage to give to Wilfred Malik they knew that Yo-Yo and Dig were going to show up and try and capture him. And Malik had this envelope that had a photograph in it of two individuals that the Chronicoms had captured that weren't on the Project Insight list. And we had a lot of we had some discussion beforehand before we, went, live with this recording, because so apparently I was alone and everybody else had a different interpretation. I thought that was part of the buildup to the reveal of Mac's parents having been imprisoned in the lighthouse. It seems, though, after having listened to other podcasts like Fantastic Geek and Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D., that it ends up that it may have ended up being anybody else, really, and that they were, at least Yo-Yo immediately recognized them. There were some people that were saying also, well, how would Yo-Yo immediately recognize what Mac's parents looked like in the 70s? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, she could have seen pictures, but I don't know. To me, and how the episode delivered that sequence, I was under the impression that was part of the buildup. But it seems as if a lot of other people were under the impression that, no, it was teasing something else that was going to come. And there was one of the hosts on the Fantastic Geek podcast had said that he had seen, or at least understands, what that reveal is going to be. And so if we're talking about two people, I'm thinking, well, because we were just talking about it, I mean, is it possible it's just a photo of Daisy and Sousa? Or would that be a little be well, I mean, you're going to find out anyway that they've been captured. Mm-hmm. Could it be that? Or could it be well, I guess that's just the question is, David, who do you think it is? Well,
I don't think it's Daisy and Sousa because, I mean, who knows if it would have gotten captured, especially when you said Whitehall's kid, and from what they showed us in the beginning of the episode, he doesn't seem like a really kind of strong person or anything like that. They could take him down easily. But also, who would you think wouldn't be on the list? On the Project Insight list, because it can't be some big S.H.I.E.L.D. person, because they know who every single person is going to be on that,
right?
So
could it be a young Coulson and a young May?
No, because again, I feel like they would be on the list. They would be top on the list,
right. So okay, I agree with you. So do you think that whoever they have captured, that those are people from a future timeline then? That's not in 1976?
What do you mean?
So, okay. What if the people that the Chronicoms have captured are not in this timeline, but they're using them as leverage?
That could be it. I mean,
because I don't expect them to come back because of other circumstances, other contractual obligations, and I probably shouldn't say this because, of course, if I say it, it won't come true. What if it? I mean, you're talking about it was two people. What if it's Bobby and Hunter? And it's in the future, in the original timeline that they left, because the Chronicoms they didn't all jump into the past. Remember that Mordecai and the other Chronicoms captured the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Mm-hmm. Or what if it's, I don't know, Piper or Flint? Or what if it's Fitz and somebody else? I
was gonna say that maybe they have Fitz somehow. They captured him.
Right. So I'm kind of leaning that perhaps maybe it's someone in the original timeline that they've been able to capture. Mm-hmm. Because nobody knows where Fitz is. We don't know what timeline it is. There was a source in Fantastic Geek podcast that said in the next 2 weeks we're going to see Fitz come back. So that's upcoming. So it might be that. But I mean, I don't know. It could be a lot of different possibilities. But I think I'm leaning more on the people in that photograph are not from this timeline because, as you say, well, add them to the list, to Project Insight if that's the case. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, if you think about it, Project Insight isn't the Chronicoms endgame, it's Hydra's endgame. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing was a ploy to get Zephyr won and to expose itself, basically. They didn't, I mean, the team could have obviously just blown it up, but that would mean that they would expose themselves to the massive Conacom mothership that would blow them out of the sky, incapacitate them, and basically knock them out of the game.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing was about. So yeah, I don't know.
No, I mean, I hope the reveal is pretty big or just very surprising.
Right.
Because I could be wrong too. Maybe they are on the list, but they just kind of want to be like, we have these two people. Are you sure you want to? Yeah.
It's interesting because the possibilities could be anything.
I don't know how they can just keep getting mysterious in this show, man. Like,
I know. Well, I mean, look, I think this season really reminds you like how much ground the show has covered. Because in a lot of, they're pulling a lot from the movies, but this is the most the show has pulled from the movies in years.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're literally taking it.
Yeah.
They're literally taking the things for the movies.
Yeah, like, I mean, and look, I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. is, even though S.H.I.E.L.D. May not exist in the canon of the Marvel Cinematic Universe film movies, they've always mirrored kind of like what they were doing. When it came to season 4 with the whole what's it called? Doctor Strange Dark Dimension thing with Ghost Rider being pulled into it. And then, of course, this whole season with time travel, clearly mirroring Endgame. So yeah, we're also just left in, oh God, like fuck, everything went wrong. And I mean, not only do Mac, Enoch and Simmons have to escape, I guess, a chase now from the Conacoms. May and Coulson have to figure out something at the lighthouse. Meanwhile, Daisy might get fucking cut into again. Like, how many times could this shit happen? Because I know that in season 5, they put a fucking inhibitor in her. Then Fix literally ripped it out of her fucking spine. Like, man, how much abuse does she have to have?
Oh my God.
And it wasn't bad enough that her mom was cut to fucking pieces. I mean, that was a pretty cryptic last scene of the episode by bringing Whitehall back, which again, to just remind listeners about the lore of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. universe. It wasn't until the mid to late 80s, I think, when Whitehall was released by Undersecretary Pierce and then captured Jiaying and then basically killed her to take her powers, which would have been right after Daisy was born. So if you remember those particular sequences. So we're still a couple of years before that whole situation even happens. Okay.
I like the detail Malik gave about him. It's like Whitehall, white hair, glasses, real Mein Kampf looking guy.
Yeah. He's a fun character to play with. He really, I mean, he's a Nazi, so it's like, I mean, he's always he's a literal Nazi, so like it's always fun to have that character. But like it's continuously surprised me how many times they keep bringing him back. They brought him back last time with season 5 with the whole Destroyer of Worlds thing that he created, which was inspired by Red Skull and his super soldier serum that got him in that way. Oh my God. I mean, all of that just shows you like how, because the episode wasn't like, it wasn't grim entirely. We begin the episode with so many wonderful, like hilarious moments with Sousa reacting to the 70's, May,
getting
not
drunk.
only basically, and a lot of gas too. It also is hilarious. Of course, the return of Patrick Warburton as General Rick Stoner was hilarious, and his interactions with May were the best. I love when May and Coulson try and tell him about the Chronocoms, and he's like STEs or S whatever, and I'm like, what?
Oh, it's like synthetic or something.
Synthetic or organic, yeah. But yeah, since we're before we get to all that stuff, we should continue on this thread of mystery.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with Simmons?
Oh yeah, I don't want to say she's a Chronicom.
I feel like a lot of people are putting that option back on the table, but I feel the show has done a good enough job of illustrating that she's clearly not. And we have several examples. She wasn't turned off by the massive EMP in episode 3, and then add to that in episode 4, May touched her and got her emotions. And she said repeatedly that whenever she touches Coulson, who is a Chronicom, she gets nothing off of him. But when she touches Gemma, she gets her emotions. So I feel the show has done a good job of telling us whatever's going on with her, she's not an LMD. Or at least she must be damn good at hiding it if that's the case. But I think what got me concerned was she didn't recognize when Deke called Fitz Bobo, which he always does. Like, and she was like a little lost for a couple of seconds there. I mean, we have the reveal of the little like implant, I guess, that she has in the back of her neck, which was causing her visible pain. But it wasn't until we get we had some clues in the beginning where she seemed very like adamant about looking for Enoch herself. And then of course, when Enoch comes back, and then the first thing she does is tells him like, I'm scared. I feel like I'm slipping. Like, am I supposed to remember this? And like, and Enoch and her have like a very like serious exchange, and like, what the fuck? And then he tells her, have you told anybody else? Like, and she's too scared to. What?
Yeah. Like, I'm curious as to, I'm guessing it's part of the plan to like throw off the Chronicoms or like somehow like not put everyone else in danger, you know, because they have her mind, right? So I want to guess that whatever she has in the back of her neck kind of manipulates her memories or something. I don't know. It's so weird what it is. It's really unexplainable. My only thing about that though is that I kind of wish in the past episodes when they talked to or like last episode when they talked to Enoch on the phone, that he kind of like I kind of wish he showed like some sort of fear towards Simmons, like him being like, hey, how's Simmons, like, is she okay and all that. Like, I kind of wish they did that just to kind of like really build up right what the machine is. You're right. But I mean, again, he's kind of emotionless, so it makes sense.
Well, I mean, he has a Chronicom, right? He has more emotion than most of the other Chronicoms, let's be honest with that. At the same time, I read his expression to her telling him that as kind of a surprise. As I don't think he was expecting that. It seemed that way. Because I would think if that was at top of his mind, he would go to her instead of her going to him. At least that's how I read it. But again, like, we still don't know what exactly happened. We remember the first 2 episodes of this season, they talk about like how they ask repeatedly, both Enoch and Gemma, how long were you separated from us? And they never give you a specific time, which of course we read it as they're building something at that point. We still don't know what happened at the end of season 6 when Enoch saved Fitz and Simmons from the Chronicoms at the lighthouse, and when he said, it will change the course of your natural lives forever. We don't know any of that yet, and I feel like these next 2 episodes we're gonna get those answers finally.
Yeah.
It's impressive though. I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I do feel like it has some, like she's wiping out her memory somehow for something. I don't know.
Clearly something is messing with her memory.
Yeah.
You can't forget Bobo.
Yeah.
And like, to me, it was hilarious. I really love Deke as a character. I really do. And maybe like Fitz is one of my favorite characters on the show, if not my favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
I think the show's done a really great job of kind of carrying on without him. Like, I mean, really, I think it shows you the strength of the cast and the characters and the writers, really everybody, that we've gone 5 episodes into a season with no fits. And they've kind of all been great. So I think that speaks to the quality of the show. But I think Deke, in many ways, is a great stand-in for Fitz in some areas. So I'll pick up on some things about Deke that I really liked about this episode. I find it so continuously adorable that he just calls Fitz and Simmons Nana and Bobo. Like the love he has for his grandparents, that just again, in many ways, he comes across as like a little kid, like how it kind of speaks to his innocence in a little ways when he refers to them as that. With he even when Simmons tells him maybe you should go away, and he's like, bye Nana, and oh my god, and of course even I think shows up more when he's kind of pushing Sousa back, because Sousa was kind of going at Simmons, and then Deke was like, hey, back up.
Yeah.
Kind of rushing to her defense here and everything. That's an exchange I want to get to after Deke, because we're already an hour into this and there's a lot to discuss about Sousa as well. But with Deke, so we kind of got a conclusion basically to this whole thing with him and Malik, and that took me for a loop, because I was like, I thought this was going to last the whole season, this whole back and forth with Malik and Deke, but man, did Deke just fucking shut him up.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, that was a great moment. Clearly the episodes beforehand were building up to it. It also reminds you how quickly we're going through these particular arcs and storylines. I think it was a great moment for Deke kind of saying to kind of push back. Because Malik has kind of been, we mentioned last week how he really felt guilty for all the people who lost their lives because he let Malik live. And so him shooting him straight up like that, it was that was a great moment for him, kind of to reaffirm that. And then also it's just wow, you got a little bit of your grandfather in you after all.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Oh my god, he does. Dang. No, but I think him doing that might bite him in the butt later. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it will, because clearly it was a moment for his character that he needed. But from a plot standpoint, it isn't going to help. Really. It would have been helpful to bring Malik in and interrogate him on what the Chronicoms and him were planning. Clearly that was the smarter approach, but of course Fury doesn't really agree with logic, doesn't at that particular moment. But no, I love Deke so much.
Was that his first kill?
I think
or
it
at
was.
Least, so yeah. So I know that can probably mess with him a bit. That could, Yo-Yo might tell everyone.
We saw him talk with Daisy about that, about him not wanting to be a killer, but then when he was captured by Malik, that kind of seemed to change his perspective. One of the things that I guess I didn't catch a little bit of the substance in there, but I know that Natalia Cordova, who plays Yo-Yo, shared the last scene that Yo-Yo had with Deke on the Zephyr. When Deke decides, by the way, I love those two. That's a really good pair. When Deke says to Yo-Yo, I'm just, forget what I said about the status quo. I can't stand by and let this happen. I just can't. It kind of it's how people say, how could Captain America go back in the own timeline and just not make things better? That's kind of the scenario of which Deke kind of found himself in. You know what? Status quo be damned. To me as a person, I can't let bad things happen. I just can't. And Natalia did a social media post on that and kind of like talked about how much more substantive that scene actually is in context with today's time. And it kind of is maybe an allegory for like people in general refusing to stay quiet and to stand up for others' rights and everything. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it was intentional by that way, but I mean, clearly she took it as that. And Yo-Yo helping Deke in that regard. So, but yeah, I mean, we're going to have more with Deke clearly in the weeks coming up. And that decision, I think, is going to come back to haunt him, because most decisions usually do with these characters. So, Sousa.
Yes. Best thing about this episode. Oh my god. I like right off the bat, he was like the funniest person there. And also just kind of his dynamic with the team. Like he's all, like, you can tell he's already a part of it, a part of the team, you know? But I like that first joke of him trying to like blend in with the clothes. He's just like, I'm not wearing any of those things. I'm sorry. No. Those look ridiculous. And then, but he's like, but you know what? I'm still ready to embrace the future. And some dude in short shorts and skates passes right by
with a big like, fucking smile on his face.
He's just like, okay, now I'm ready to embrace the future. And I think I saw on Chloe Bennett's Instagram. Mm-hmm. She posted a picture of that guy in the skates on her Instagram. God. I thought it was hilarious.
By the way, not to cut off Sousa, but like, I mean, I feel like what's transpired these last few episodes have kind of like proven that Daisy was kind of right from the beginning about killing Malik, because look at the just the damage that has happened because Malik survived. And now that the team like has now basically gone behind that, I mean, and with time being out of sync and everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Oh, and well, Sousa was kind of like adding on to that. Basically, it's like you guys seem to just make things worse now. Like, how could you keep doing this without thinking things through? You know. Mm-hmm. I really love that scene where he starts yelling at Simmons.
Yeah,
and that. Well, it's the scene with him and Deke, and he's like, what did he say? Like, I traded my life for this or something like that? And then
I got pulled out of my own time.
Yeah, my bad. I got pulled out of my own time, and then Deke's like, so did we. Like, come on, like, we're all in this together. We gotta work.
I mean, that particular exchange was, I think, strong for both of the actors, for Enver and for Jeff. And it's one of those exchanges where, like, I see both of their perspectives, and I think they're both rightfully upset. I can see both, like, you know, Deke at instinct is to defend Simmons and everything, but then also, like, Deke, from maybe more than anybody else in that plane, yeah, all of us were pulled out of our own time. Deke is literally a man out of time. Mm-hmm. His reality doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like, that's done. So, like, more than all these other agents, Deke knows what Sousa's going through. Mm-hmm. Only except, of course, initially he had a very positive experience because, I mean, let's be honest, Deke's reality was kind of a shithole. So you could only go up from there to go back in time. But he understands what Sousa's going through. And of course, like, that's really what it is. It's like Sousa, at the same time, what's really fueling this explosion is like he's just hurt by, you know, being pulled out of his time and not being able to say goodbye to anybody. And that's death, basically. And that's not an easy thing to go through. But at the same time, he is pushing back on Team S.H.I.E.L.D. and questioning, I think he's asking some pretty good questions. It's like, hey, I think it's a pretty fair observation that based on how this week's episode went, things have not really gotten any better. They've only gotten worse. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not like blaming S.H.I.E.L.D. for it, but like he feels very strongly that S.H.I.E.L.D. hasn't clearly had a agenda here because, and again, it's a little, I don't know how you could with what little information they have and for how sporadically they jump in time and for what the missions are and how, you know, by design they have to follow the chronocoms. But, you know, Sousa isn't wrong for saying that you guys are basically just making it up week to week.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever good you've done, it doesn't seem to be getting better.
Yeah.
And of course, that's just the wrong time because Simmons, as she says, is slipping and it's just not the best time for answers, which, I mean, to be fair to Sousa and to everybody else, I mean, they haven't really been given answers. They don't know where Fitz is. They don't know how any of this even happened. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of the audience. We don't know those answers. But I feel it's healthy for Sousa to kind of, you know, put S.H.I.E.L.D. in check a little bit here. It's like, and it also shows him, you know, you'd think that a spy out of the 1950s would be out of his depth with like this 21st century technologically advanced unit, but no, it's not the case. And I think really in so many aspects, Sousa is proving his worth to the team. Mm-hmm. Also, I really liked his interactions with Daisy. Not not just from a comedic perspective, from the whole like, wow, look at that smartphone touchscreen thing. But then also we got some serious moments just like of characters having, you know, to show some emotion here. When Susie realizes, I think after the phone exchange happened, Daisy is working on the computer or whatever, and the camera cuts to Susan, and he's like, and the music kind of swells up, and he's like, just realizing how much he's lost. Mm-hmm. And like, just what unknown territory he's in. It's just like that's really, I think, what's weighing him more than like, it's not that he doesn't think these guys are doing a terrible job overall. It's just what's fueling the anger and the frustration is that he everything really.
Yeah, he just missed everything really. And what I really liked about him is that, you know, yeah, he's out of his own time. He has no idea how society is working now. Like, it's already in the 70s. Once they get to like our present time, holy shit, he's gonna be like alienated so much more. But what I really liked about his character is just that he's great on instinct. Mm-hmm. You know, like that scene when they're in the bar and Daisy starts talking to one of Malik's kid, and you know, you can see like usually for them, all of them really, like when some situation happens, like they just somehow end up escalating it. Yeah. But then here comes Sousa, and he's just like instantly, we're out of this. You know?
Yeah, that moment you're talking about, by the way, the actor that plays young Gideon Malik, and I saw this on the Elizabeth Henstridge live stream, where the director of this episode told that actor that plays young Gideon Malik. So like the actor comes up to him and he says, "How do you want me to play this scene and everything?" And the director says, "Think Donald Trump Jr."
Oh no!
And yeah, he really leveled up the creep factor there. So, so just a little bit of tidbits about that was hilarious to me. But again, talking about like pair ups, Sousa and Daisy make a pretty interesting pair up. So and them doing it, of course, and then we have a scene here where he realizes like she has powers and everything. So
yeah. I really hope he interacts with all of them like individually.
Right,
you know,
right.
I would love to see how he interacts.
We don't know how long he's going to stay, right? Like that's kind of like
that is true.
The lingering end of this. It's like we don't know where he jumps off, if he jumps off, because he also mentioned this episode that he'd rather jump off and like stay behind. Of course, Coulson says there's no telling how that would have turned out, and he probably would have been killed. I mean, if it's just you.
I would be okay with it if they give him something for his leg. You know, just like, I mean, they have a bunch of technology there. Just give him something so he can finally run.
Can they?
I mean, I'm
feel
sure they can.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want to go extreme, they can just give him a new one.
I know, right?
Yeah, but like, I'm sure they can just make like some like leg brace or something like that and have him run. Like, I'll be okay with that, but more than anything, I just kind of wish they would give it to him just so he can do a lot more.
Also, we have some wonderful stuff going on in the lighthouse. Apparently, those old school S.H.I.E.L.D. uniforms, the blue and white uniforms, were pulled from the comic books.
Oh, yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, I've seen it before. I know I've seen a few pictures of like a Nick Fury comic, like an old one, and they're basically like that. Only in the comics, like they look tighter. They don't look like jumpsuits very much.
Right.
But I could have sworn we've seen those already though in the show.
I don't think we did. Where would we?
I don't know. Like when we first see the lighthouse, like I feel like it must have come up or something. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Maybe in the background.
Maybe
because I mean, when we first see, the lighthouse in the past, when they come back in the future, because in that episode we have Rick Stoner, his first appearance as like the tour guide, basically, of the base.
I don't know. I feel like we've seen it in the show, but like, my memory could just be weird.
Right. We get a wonderful interaction. Yeah, I mean, these small moments kind of like mirror to me some of my favorite parts about Avengers Endgame. So like this moment where Mac and Yo-Yo are on a reconnaissance mission to the lighthouse to see if things had changed or not. And Mac was thinking of this as like some, a date night of sorts to finally be alone with each other. And then when Yo-Yo would like, kind of tells him like, I don't really feel I'm up for this. Like I don't have my powers. And then Mac just very strongly, immediately, like, your powers don't define you. And then she's like, well, then why do you call me Yo-Yo? And then without even missing a beat, with the music swelling up and everything, it's like, because you always bounce back. And like, man, that actor's so good. Like that landed so well. And it reminded me of like interactions from Endgame between characters that mean that much to each other. It was one of my favorite moments with them of this whole episode of this season, really.
Yeah. No, that was such a great line. Like it hits hard.
He really does.
Just like how much he cares about her, and just kind of like, but you're also just kind of like, yeah, you're right. She'll bounce back from this. Heck yeah.
Yeah. Another one with Yo-Yo and with Mac. They bring back that I don't know if it's trope, but you remember in season 4, every now and then they would like, especially I think in the episode Broken Promises, where Ada is attacking the base and Mac and Yo-Yo are like constantly talking about like these robot invasion movies. And then of course, and that comes back into play here where Yo-Yo, says to Mac, haven't you ever seen a James Bond movie? Where you have like guys in jumpsuits in an underground base that never turns out good. So yeah.
Specifically the jumpsuits. That's what makes them the villains.
yeah, basically.
And she's not wrong.
She's not wrong at all. No, she isn't. So wonderful moments there. Coulson and May. We got finally some interaction with Coulson and May, and it just, I really wonder where they're going to go with those two, because, I mean, again, we have, another moment where, like, Coulson spends the whole episode, like, trying to get close to her, and then when they're about to, like, start putting the bombs in the lighthouse, and he says to her, we had some good times back in the day, and I just hope it can feel like that again. And then May is like, right now, I just hope I can feel anything again. And it was like, damn, that's so, God, like, yeah, it's one of those moments I feel that hits hard. And it does, like, this episode is doing so much, not just with the aesthetic style, with the tie-ins, with, all of the plot that's going on, but that it also has the space to push the characters and their relationships forward and remind us of what they mean to each other. Like, there's a lot of, I feel it's a balancing act, and they're doing it really, really well, I feel.
No, yeah. Their interactions, it's always going to be sad for a while now, you know.
It's been sad for a while. What are you talking about? It's been like, I mean, you think it wasn't bad enough the contentious relationship that Sarge had with May, and then of course with Sarge. Basically, I mean, remember like the last time before all this happened, the last time she saw the face of Coulson, he fucking stabbed her and pushed her to a fucking dimension, and then she came back kind of broken with all of these like empath powers or something. So it's like it's been a rocky relationship with that face, let's be honest, with May. So
yeah,
I mean, I don't blame her taking this long to warm up to him, and she's getting there. It's just that she can't feel much of anything, and that's kind of a problem for her, and she's learning to deal with it. But as you mentioned, I think last week, we're seeing how that also comes in handy when she knocked out Rick Stoner, because he was not buying that at all.
Yeah,
so,
no, that was great. They could have gone on for like a lot longer and would have been awkward, but she's just like, oh, forget it. Okay, I got you.
So yeah, we're already seeing that kind of used in action in that way. So yeah.
Also, I just want to bring it up again. Drunk May. That was hilarious.
No, it was.
It really just like something new that we've never seen before. Just like how a few weeks ago we saw her like smile, like be excited about something. I can't wait till they get to the 80s and like she just touches someone that's like high as fuck. And
maybe. Yeah. A nice little call back to season 6 here when Malik goes up to Coulson and asks for his name, and then Coulson was like Patrick Kutik, which is a play on Pachakutik, which is the name of Sarge, the real name of Sarge. I don't know if you caught that, but yeah.
I didn't catch that. I thought you were just making
no,
up some stupid
no.
That's I'm sure it must have been a reference to like when I first saw it, but I didn't catch on.
In fairness, it was a lot of references to this episode.
Oh,
I mean, almost too many to keep count of. I mean, we got, in the list of names, there was, Peggy Carter's name was on there, Bruce Banner, Victoria Hand, Robert Gonzalez, remember him from season 2, Commander Gonzalez, played by actor Edward James Olmos, who led the Real S.H.I.E.L.D. Faction. That he was on the list. Yeah, a lot of people's names that were familiar were there.
That's cool.
So, yeah, a lot of wonderful references all over the place. Of course, we see Daisy here. Basically, again, one of the ways is how they're reaching back to the first season with her basically hacking and doing her thing on computers and everything. So, yeah, I think we've said just about everything we can say. Is there anything else about this episode?
No, just again, like I don't know how they keep building up mystery for the show. And I can't wait. I hope they have like a great air battle in the next episode. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool. The CGI must be like, ooh, good luck.
Well, I know that Mark Kolpak, again, the head of VFX for the show, said that the last episode of the season was the most VFX on any episode ever. So they're building up to something pretty big. So, and again, to me, like, this whole season just proves why season 5 shouldn't have been the end. That I'm glad that we've gotten these 2 seasons, extra seasons. But yeah, man, I'm loving it. I think we're on a roll. Let's keep this thing going.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening to our weekly Beyond the Shield recap series. A reminder that we're on Castbox.fm, that's our official feed, but also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Really, every single Tuesday will be up on here. We have other shows with Avatar: The Last Airbender recap, which David's also prominently featured on. We have weekly episodes over at Spotlight talking about some movie reviews and, of course, some COVID talk. And Fantasy Fair is coming back as well with Hamilton and more announcements coming your way. So stick here on Red Spotlight, under our spotlight, as we like to say. And until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.